Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm at Podcast Movement 2018, which is a pretty cool, thrilling opportunity. Get to meet all these different people, different vendors, and today I'm honored to have with me two folks who work at Podbean.com. That's where my podcast is hosted currently. They do a really great job, and they have interesting stories themselves. With me, I have Shannon Moore-Martin. She's a director of communications, both at Podbean and Easy Living, because one company's not enough. Right. She needs to stack them. And I have Jennifer Crawford. And Jennifer runs, well, she has the great title of Chick in Charge of Social Media Rescue. And your role at Podbean?
I have so many hats, I feel like, with Podbean, but I think the official title is Community Manager. Okay. But it's such a fun company to work for that I raise my hand whenever they have a need because I just love the team so much that I love doing whatever comes along.
Cool. Now, the interesting thing with Shannon, I've been wanting to interview for a while. However, she's a little tougher to pin down because she lives in Shanghai.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Moved there about 6 years ago, and we went originally because of my husband's job. He got an international opportunity, but we had been living overseas in Spain, so we were looking for more opportunities to go different places. So it was a happy move. And since then, we've kind of changed directions with careers and stuff, but enjoying traveling around. So it's been fun.
Okay, so you determined that you weren't enough time zones forward.
Right.
Spain, that's only a few. We need to really kick it forward and go all the way to China.
Yeah, and I spoke a little Spanish, so I just wanted to go somewhere where I just wouldn't understand anything.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I barely get through my own current language. And Jennifer, your other adventure, you do social media, so maybe you can help rescue all of us.
That's always an adventure.
How does that work?
Well, I tend to work with small and medium-sized businesses and some personal brands, typically some authors, independent authors, and I work with them to come up with some social media strategy, and often we'll also handle their management. So they might not have the time or resources to actually get on social media because they're so busy running their companies that they need to outsource that and make sure that it's done. They realize the importance of it, and then we do some online customer service too because nowadays people are not picking up the phone and calling the companies when they're unhappy. They are going to social media and they're shouting it to all their friends and acquaintances on the internet, and they're very loud about it. So if the companies aren't monitoring that on social media, their reputation can be negatively affected.
So you're a tripwire.
What?
You have like tripwires set up for your clients to see
what
somebody's talking about and what's going on
here.
Right.
So we monitor the chatter, whether that's hashtags or their handles, and depending on what platform they're most prevalent on and where the chatter's happening. And it can also happen on review sites as well.
Okay. Silly question for you.
Yeah.
On Facebook, I'll say Twitter, what is the difference in terms of benefit between a like and a retweet?
Well, a like doesn't have as much value, I guess, because it's just like, hey, I liked it, but it's not going anywhere. So the value of the retweet is that it's then being shared on that person's profile, so that person's audience, in theory, will see it or could possibly see it. Where if I just like something, my audience doesn't see what I'm liking. So it's just me saying, hey, I appreciate what you're putting out there, but for whatever reason, I'm not retweeting it because maybe it doesn't fit with what I'm trying to project on my own profile, yet I want to show some sort of support for what you're putting out there.
Cool. And how do you recommend people put things out to help get the better engagement from other customers and things like that?
I think, it's simple, but I think you have to be very positive and generous. So I am a big advocate of emoticons and the power of an emoticon because so much is misinterpreted on the internet, and sometimes people will unintentionally convey something that's not positive with a simple sentence even. And even a little smiley face emoticon can translate so much. It's like it goes across language barriers even. It tells people, hey, I meant this in a nice way or a lighthearted way.
So like a wink if somebody puts something out that could be very sarcastic, or it could be a tease if there's a wink.
Yeah, and look for people, join the conversation. The word social media, the word social is in there, and I think sometimes that gets forgotten, and people are just about getting out there and talking about what they're doing rather than engaging with other people that might be similar to them or interested in what they're doing or doing something that is in their ecosystem, so to speak. So a lot of it's just having curiosity, and just like you wouldn't go to a party and just put a cardboard cutout of yourself there and walk away.
That doesn't work.
No, you would go and you'd talk to people and you'd shake hands and introduce yourself. So that's the same thing online.
Okay. I've heard a rule. I don't know if it's a rule or a guideline or just a strategy, that it's a good idea to share material that's not you, like on a 5-to-1 ratio or even more. Like when you're sharing things with people, not me,
Right.
me,
Yeah.
but my friend, this cool thing, my other friend, this cool thing, this, that, and then, oh, by the way, I did this.
Yeah. So that speaks to the generosity that I mentioned. It's like, hey, share what other people are doing that is relevant to you, and help them. And typically people will reciprocate and appreciate that and remember it. It makes you much more memorable than if you're just like, hey, you show up to the party and you're like, look at me, look what I did, look at me, look what I did. I mean, that gets annoying after a while. So, and people will tune you out.
Makes total sense. Now, Shannon, you're doing communications.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fall into a similar category? Or?
I do some social media in that Jennifer handles most of it, but I also am in a lot of the podcasting groups because those kind of things are much more personal interaction. You can't act as a company. So and there's also a lot of those and a lot of people that we all have gotten to know. But my main role is writing the content for Podbean. So for instance, we have a huge library of tutorials, FAQs. Every time we bring out a new feature, which we're always innovating, we have to, of course, educate customers on how to use it and tell them that it exists. So I write the email newsletters, I write the actual website landing pages, so just a lot of writing. So even though we're in the audio space, although I do some video tutorials, but even though we're in audio, I'm usually the typing person. So I do a lot of written content.
Cool. So while social media may be one thing, I'm guessing you design the overarching strategy of the site.
Right, the messaging, and it's nice because a lot of it's marketing communications, some of it, but a lot of it's educational stuff with podcasters. And in my work career, that's a lot of what I've done. I've done marketing communications, but with a kind of a bent towards education, and I really like that. And I also am sort of one of the podcaster liaisons at the company, so I sit with our development team and our CEO, who you got to meet, and so we get feedback. We were talking about some feedback earlier that we get feedback, and then I'll sit with them and say, hey, we're hearing a lot of this chatter online about people needing help with this certain issue. And what I love about Podbean is how responsive they are. And I mean, responsive to the customers, but responsive to me, bringing these issues. And they say, okay, I mean, of course, as a business, you have to analyze, does that make sense? We want to be able to keep costs for customers down, so we're not going to just implement something one person asked for, perhaps. But a lot of times, customers have the best ideas, and that's how we've come up with the things that we've done. So that's a big role that I play, too.
Cool. And on that note, Jennifer runs a podcast that is, I guess, the official podcast of Podbean, or at least very much affiliated with it.
Yep.
Are you doing that? I know you've done it on your own. Are you doing that to kind of help walk in the shoes of the podcaster for a mile type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we always say that we feel like we need to champion the independent podcaster because that's such a large portion of our customer base, and we're so indebted to them and feel like this allegiance to them. So the Podcasting Smarter podcast and also the corresponding Podcasting Smarter Facebook group, I think was just a way for us to just do something extra to reach out and provide some value to our customer base, and even people that aren't our customers, just independent podcasters that are looking to connect with a community. I think we've done a good job of relaying a very friendly personality attached to the Podbean brand, and so we carry that over into the group and try to carry that over into the podcast. And it's actually just a lot of fun to talk to people that are hosted on our platform and let them tell us what they've learned. It helps us learn things along the way, and there's always something to be to be learned that we haven't heard before. And I think it does help a lot of our newer podcasters to have a resource, when they get there. There's a podcast that is put out by my hosting company, and I get to hear from other podcasters doing what I'm doing. So I think it gets some community cohesion going on to offer those two things.
Would you guys both say that you kind of cater toward the independent podcaster, the small guy?
I think a lot. Yeah, we have a separate product that Jennifer works a lot on called our enterprise podcasting, but you don't see a lot about that because it's internal communications for big companies. So that's kind of a separate section. It wouldn't be something people talk about like here at Podcast Movement a lot. People might sort of not even think of it as a podcast. It's private content. So that is a huge area for us. But as far as general podcast hosting clients, definitely the independent podcaster, and we have just the nature of the platform itself, the way it's set up, the ease of use, and also the simplistic pricing plans that we have. It's not complicated to figure out. It's pretty straightforward. Have really been perfect for that independent podcaster audience, and then it allows it to grow with them. So we've had a lot of people that start out with us and they're just like everybody else, and it's just one guy, one gal, and they've done amazing things, and they don't have to move to a different platform. We can totally support them, but they were with us from the start. So it's definitely
okay, so you guys can scale. It's not a matter of like, wait a minute, if I have more than 1,000 or 10,000 or you're able to serve that.
Definitely, and that's sometimes a little bit of a myth that we found out there. We've talked to people and say, "Oh, you guys are great for people when they don't know, much about podcasting, or they, or they're new to it," and then they kind of think, "Oh, but if someone has to use this other host if they're more professional," and we have some huge shows that host with us, and we're completely able to handle their needs. And actually, I say a lot of the tools we've brought on board now are things that make us a bit unique over some of the friendly competitors that we have, that can really help as people grow. So I think we're able to handle that. But our goal is to help all the independent podcasters get to wherever they want to be. I mean, some people just it's just a fun thing, but a lot of people want to grow and want to monetize, and so we want to have all of that for them.
Cool. Now, Podbean's kind of unique in the sense it is both a hosting platform, but it is also an app.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Which is really more the focus of the company, and how would you rate the purpose of each, if you don't mind?
We're really a hosting company at heart, and with hosting goes this monetization side. So the reason for the app is because of our hosting customers. We saw that mobile is important, and especially before Google got into the podcasting game, they are now. There was not a lot of great solutions for Android, and so we felt like we needed to have that. We can promote our podcasters in the app in certain ways, and if you don't have the app, you can't do that. Podcasters can engage with their listeners through our comments. You can even record in the app. Not a ton of people use it, but if you want to do something on the go, and you can edit. So we wanted to have all those features, but that was driven by podcaster need more than. So there's some companies that just do apps, and so that it's a bit of a different thing. But our focus is still on the podcaster.
I know that one of your competitors builds apps for podcasters where they can have their show app. Yep. Is that also something you consider doing with your basic app as a template? We do and can give custom apps, but usually it's mostly our enterprise clients that use it. What we found is the trend is that listeners want to have a podcasting app. They don't want to have a separate app for most shows. Right. If you're like me, your phone only has no room left, and you don't want to go into so I mean it is something that works for certain shows, especially at a certain level, and so if they get to that level and want to have it, and for the simplicity of it. But I think just in watching technology trends, it's going to be less and less, and more of people wanting multi-purpose apps. So that's the direction, but it is something we offer, and we do it for some of our business clients, and so people can get those types of plans if they want their own app. Yep. Now, how many hosts, or how many shows are you guys hosting at this point? I know it's always growing.
We have a counter on our homepage, and I remember looking at it recently and going, there was a big jump. So I think the last time I looked at it was 175,000 plus shows were on that counter. So that's pretty incredible. And then the number of episodes is astronomically larger than that.
Right. So that many distinct shows that are being
Mm-hmm.
hosted.
And
Wow.
the thing I tell people about that is because they'll say, well, wait a minute, on Apple, there's not even that many, but they haven't necessarily all submitted even to Apple or iTunes.
Right.
We do offer a free plan that a lot of people try out podcasting, and we have students, for example. And so there is a big chunk of that are free shows that haven't really gone anywhere. But even the other day we were looking, and we have a pretty bit, we had almost 1,000 people using a free plan, but they were publishing shows. So we're telling them about some of the advantages of upgrading, but some of those aren't active. So I'd say we have a core of active, maybe around 40,000 active. Yeah.
Well, cool. Now, earlier you brought up, and I know you guys have been rolling out some new features. Either of you want to discuss those? Because I think they could be really, really interesting for myself, which I'll definitely be investing in, but my podcasting friends, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about it. So Shannon's been really involved with this, but I'll start out. It's called a product called Pod Ads. And it was designed, again, with the independent podcaster in mind, the smaller show that's been told they can't get sponsors, they can't monetize, they're not big enough or significant enough to attract advertisers. So Pod Ads was designed in order to help smaller shows as well as small businesses and events that need local targeted advertising.
Yeah, excellent. Good job. So it's a programmatic ads platform. So for people that are like into this kind of techie stuff, they might know. So that means that an advertiser goes in and they kind of set up some specs. It's very self-serve. They upload the audio file for it, so these aren't host-read ads. We can also get that recorded for them. So if it's a small business that doesn't have an ad, we can get that done by a voice artist. So yeah, we've tried to take all the friction out of it. And so they go in and they buy, and so they may be getting ads on maybe, let's say, 10 different shows to get what they want. So this means that you don't have to have this 10 or 50,000 downloads per episode to get an advertiser. You may be one of many that the ad's going out on, and it enables them to get the reach they want, but enables you to get dollars for your time. And because they're dynamically inserted, they can target specific geographies all the way down to the city level. So we're seeing this opportunity right now. If you're a local business, it doesn't make a lot of sense to advertise on podcasts unless it's some podcast that really has to do with your city or something. But now this will be perfect for local businesses. It's much more affordable than a lot of local media that exists already. And they can also target categories. And we also are promoting it to podcasters, for podcasters to be advertisers, because a lot of people are doing cross promotion with other shows where they're just exchanging free promos, and we're saying put a few dollars behind it, and with a lot less effort, because you don't have to make a deal with somebody and go through all of that. You are targeting people that already listen to podcasts, so it's so perfect.
That really, okay, so it's almost to the degree of granularity of like a Facebook ad, where you could say,
Exactly.
okay, I'm a Tucson business, I want you to put my ad in these 10 podcasts, but only listeners in the geographical area of southern Arizona.
Yep. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I talked to somebody today that works, she's an advertising agency, but she said over the years she had a retailer that came to her, and they had multiple cities across the U.S., but they had different names, and so they needed different messaging.
Oh, wow.
And basically they got turned down for podcast advertising because everyone said, well, we can't. How is that possible? With this, they'd be able to run different ads in different markets, and podcasters can get some money from it, and then it's also a more applicable ad to the listener because it's something in their area. So it doesn't necessarily matter as much if it matches up with the type. People have had trouble figuring out what type of podcast should I be on. Well, it's going to be something in their local area, so it's going to be something potentially relevant to them.
Cool. And because they're dynamic too, does this mean that you won't have, my episode 1 from 3 years ago has GoToMeeting?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or
exactly.
whatever product no longer exists or anything. So
Yep.
Some episodes may have no ads at all, and some may have them. It's just randomly done. Or not.
Definitely. And people can then take more advantage of it's much more efficient. You can take advantage of back catalog if you're still getting a lot of downloads on those. And we also do offer self-serve dynamic insertion. So if a podcaster brings their own advertiser in, they can use that technology to be more efficient, but in their own host-read audio file or read by the company.
Really?
And we can insert it for them. Yeah. So that's It's a different,
Is there
two different products.
A time type of situation where they have to have it a 30-second spot or a minute, or is it just put it here and it's a minute and 10 seconds? I don't care.
If you're self-serving, it doesn't matter. You determine it. But for the pod ads, we have guidelines in the. So when they're setting up the campaign, we tell the advertiser an approximate time for the slot, which are like typical pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll times. And I forget what they are off the top of my head, but 30 seconds for the pre-roll, up to 60 for the mid-roll, that kind of thing. And then podcasters plan where they want those spots to drop.
Okay, so that's cool. So even if you're selling through another means, because you're able to put it in dynamically, you can also pull it dynamically.
Yep.
And the episodes are clean again. So you're running a 2-month campaign or something like that, and they say, okay, well, 2 months is up. Huh?
Yep. Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Now, how is it going with the with podcasters that say want to kind of help each other out because we're all broke?
Yeah. So what we're seeing it as is an extension of the free cross promotion. So it still can do that, certainly. But we found, like, in the Facebook groups and stuff, a lot of people are chatting and saying, oh, can I I have these spots, can I run them on your podcast in exchange? But we see it as an extension of that. So okay, if that's working for you, instead of trying to spend hours contacting people and figuring that out, go in and and you can set a daily budget cap. Set a $5 cap like you would in Facebook, run some ads for a couple weeks, and then all you have to do is upload the audio, and it takes 3 steps, so nothing more to it.
And you could end up being on shows that you hadn't yet discovered in your niche. And, and I've talked to a lot of podcasters who've been very disenchanted with Facebook ads because they haven't worked for them for one reason or another. And there's nothing a podcaster hates more than spending and wasting money. But I think most podcasters are willing to invest a little bit in their show. So like Shannon said, you can set a budget. So instead of spending $20 or $25 on a Facebook ad, maybe not even reaching people that know how to download a podcast, this is like the warmest lead we could possibly give you as a podcast listener who's interested in the type of content that you're producing. So we're able to lead you directly to your audience. So, I mean, how could you not, at least try it?
Well, I plan to, actually.
I hope you do.
If anything, for the dynamic insertion, because right now I have friends with podcasts I like, and I just kind of had them build promos for me to put in the shows just to say, hey, look, check these out. They're really cool people.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And how's it rolling out so far?
It's very new, but we're getting a lot of positive feedback. And we have had podcasters make money already from some of our advertisers. That we had some people that were previously in our marketplace that rolled over into this, and we'll start to do a lot more marketing and sales. So we haven't done a lot of that yet. So it's still it's lean on advertisers at the moment. So people that are on it, I tell them, don't worry, they will be coming. There's going to be a big mass, and we don't make it exclusive. So if you're signed up for pod ads, but you somehow get a deal through an ad agent or you find a sponsor, we don't say you can't do that. So there's no harm really in being signed up for it if you like the concept. Some people don't want to do non-host read ads, and we don't force anyone into it.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, moving to another subject.
Okay.
We're currently at a very large podcasting conference, and I'm with somebody else who is an organizer and director of DC Podfest.
Yeah, DC Podfest, a very different type of conference, but a good one, I think. So that takes place, we're going to have our 4th year this November 9th and 10th. It's always in November, and it's been in DC proper up until now, but this year it's going to be in Arlington, which is just over the river from DC, short metro ride away. And we're in this great new space. We're really excited about it. But we bring together a lot of independent podcasters. We have the spirit of DC sort of infused into the event. So we get a lot of podcasters that are very representative of the area. So activism, politics, social change, those are all like heavily creativity, artists and all kinds of creative types have podcasts in DC. So they're nicely represented, and we try to definitely reflect that in our programming with a lot of diverse speakers and topics that speak to that audience. So it's a good time. We have a lot of networking thrown in and some live shows, and so we try to have a lot of very interactive things going on in the 2 days.
Okay, and speaking of activism, I believe you run a dog rescue group or work with them?
Yeah, I work with one. Yeah, on a volunteer basis in our area. My husband and I have fostered rescue dogs on and off for 12 or 13 years now. And we adopted one of our fosters a little over a year ago. So they call that a foster failure. But if you don't know what fostering is, it's where you take a pet into your home and give them a temporary home and a home environment so they're not in a shelter or a cage, which tends to affect their temperament.
Sure.
And so this way, they're in a home environment. You really get to know them, and then you're very involved in placing them in a home that matches their personality.
And it helps socialize them.
Yeah, and you help socialize them and train them, and you see, the dog you get on day one is typically not the dog you have 2 weeks from them. They really come out of their shell in a home environment, getting love, attention, proper care. So then we can really talk about the pet in a real way to any potential adopter and make the appropriate match.
And do you offer some kind of training, or internally do some kind of training to help make sure that they don't go to the new home and maybe cause damage or things like that, and they get kicked back into the system? Yeah,
this rescue group in particular is really good about that. They tend to pull dogs out of overcrowded shelters in less affluent areas of Virginia. So a lot of times these dogs have not lived indoors, they've been chained outside, so they have done, sometimes they're what they call feral, so they just have not been fully, really domesticated like we think of a dog should be. So they will invest a lot of time and energy in professional training, and will keep them in a foster home longer than typical in order to make sure they're nice and stable and well trained before they send them off to a home. And they're also really good about documenting that on social media, so they get people really involved in the dog's story, which helps him or her have a happy ending.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So closing out, what do you guys have coming up, either personally or professionally? Podbean?
Goodness. Well, I will be going to DC Podfest in November, so I'm excited. We've been doing more and more, as Podbean, we've been doing more conferences, a mixture of the typical sort of podcast conferences, trying to do some more worldwide things. So I went to Copenhagen for a podcast day in Europe this year. So we have global customers, but there's a lot more of this kind of stuff in the U.S. So now we're trying to find what's out there. And Jennifer and Vernon on our team have gone to a lot of more business and HR-related podcasts for our enterprise products. So we've been quite busy with that. And in between now and then, personally, I do a lot of travel. So I have a trip to the Philippines planned in October. We have a big holiday. And so I'll go back to Shanghai, then go to the Philippines, then go to DC, and then who knows what's next.
And Jennifer?
Yeah, well, I have a trip to Myrtle Beach planned, not nearly as exotic, but the
More
annual
relaxing.
family vacation is on the books in August. Just the worst time to go to Myrtle Beach because it's so hot, but my in-laws get a nice beach house and they pay for it, so you can't complain too much. So I'll be doing that, and I'm looking forward to, I think the next conference that Vernon, our team member, and I are going to is in Chicago. It's called an online learning conference. So we're presenting our enterprise solution to companies that are looking for innovative online learning tools. And so podcasts, our podcast hosting solution is great because it gives them a distribution model that's on demand, and then we can also back that up with very granular user-based statistics, so they can get the data and know that the people that are absorbing their learning content are actually listening to it. So it gives them good intel. We get to demo it. I think it should be a lot of fun.
Sounds great. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time out. I know you're going crazy in this conference.
It's
really busy.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on, but it's all good. So thank you, Eric.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to chat.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey everyone, Eric here. I want to thank you again so much for listening. I know your time is valuable, so I really appreciate you taking some. If you like what you hear, please spread the word. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Unstructured P, as in podcast. Also, you can review the podcast in whichever app you use. It really helps a bunch to spread the word. Thanks again.
Mr. Hayes' office, how may I help you?
Andrea, it's Marilyn over at Kennedy Parker Construction.
Hello, Marilyn. Would you like me to connect Mr. Parker to
A
Mr.
fish
Hayes?
surrounded by sharks. A secretary cursed by desire and ambition. Introducing The Diarist by Donna Barrow Green. The Diary is an addictive psychological thriller, satirical, suspenseful, and full of twists. Available on iTunes or anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I've hurt your feelings. Or if something I've said has led you to believe I think you're incompetent.
It's just been so long since you've given me any encouragements or compliments on my...
Andrea, I do notice you. I like that blouse on you very much. You look very pretty just as you are right now.
Oh, well,
It's very pretty on you.
Thank you.
What sort of fabric is it?
It's silk?
It's lovely. You have excellent taste in clothes. I notice. Would you mind removing your cardigan?
My sweater?
Yes, so I can see the blouse in its entirety.
Why?
I like it very much. You see, I do notice you. You know that, don't you? I don't have to tell you I notice these things. You know when I like something, don't you?
I don't know.
I repeated his words in my mind. I notice you. That was it, wasn't it? I wanted someone to notice me. Not Andrea the daughter, the wife, the secretary. Not even Andrea the artist or ad girl. I wanted someone, anyone, to see me. More than anything, it was Richard. Please don't think unkind of me, dear reader.
Now, tonight's adventure into the unknown.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey, it's Sarge.
And Frenzy.
From the Sarge Approved Podcast. If you're not familiar, the Sarge Approved Podcast has a guest every episode featuring people like actors,
Comedians.
Survival experts,
Authors.
martial arts experts.
Basically a whole gamut of badass people.
Yes. And you can check out all our episodes on all the podcast platforms, iTunes,
Spreaker.
Stitcher,
Google Play Music.
iHeartRadio. And
yeah.
you can check us out on all our social media, Facebook.
Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
It's all at Sarge Approved.
Yep.
Check it out, and we hope you enjoy it.
Bye.
Later.